Tasmania Talks with Mike O'Loughlin, weekday mornings from 9.
We'll have a chat to our federal Liberal member for Braddon, Mr. Gavin Pearce. Gav, good morning.
G'day, Mike. How are you?
Well, thank you. Your good self?
Yeah, no, going well up here on the northwest.
Oh, good. Tell us the reinstatement of the pandemic leave payment. This was a tough one, I know, when the Premiers got together with the Prime Minister. I know that Labor had said, no, we're going to halt it, but at least it's now the $750 payment to workers who had to isolate due to COVID. It's back for a while. Yes, and that was a measure, of course, that we had in as the previous government.
Yeah, that was due to end. I mean, we have to put cut-off dates and drop dead times on these types of measures, and it's up to the government of the day to either reinstall them or to quit them for good. But rather than have a retrospective look at what the previous government did, they're the government now, and they need to act on what is on the ground, the extant need that exists, and make decisions based on that.
Well, it was a coalition decision, but then Anthony Albanese's government initially decided not to extend the stop date beyond the end of June, but then they've thankfully changed their mind. The rationale for keeping the payment is strong, but it doesn't appear to be as strong as it was, does it?
No, it doesn't. However, these are our most vulnerable people that we're talking about here. And the other thing is, this is a measure that we've put in place. It's mandated. It's a legal requirement that they don't go to work. So therefore, the government has placed that on that demographic. That's why I think I support the continuation of the scheme. The other thing to consider is if we didn't have that, then you've got to look at the spread and the hesitancy of people to go and take a test and to front up and say, I've got COVID and I need to isolate. When they're not getting any support, well, what's to say that they're not going to hide that and go to work and spread the disease anyway, the virus anyway? So
yeah, exactly.
These are all considerations that we need to consider before making a decision.
So when will the $750 payment end?
In September, and it's about the same time as the fuel excise comes off. So there's another decision that the current government, the Albanese government,
that's frightening, isn't it?
Make. Yes, and again, that was a measure that we put in place. That had to have a drop dead time on it, so that that could not continue on and on and on, and have these long tails that would last years. But they're the government of the day now. They've said that they're going to fix things, and that's what we want to see now, them actually fix things.
Now, also, let's talk about foot and mouth disease in Indonesia and the impact on agriculture. The federal government has committed millions of dollars to what they call a vaccine campaign to stamp out, I believe, foot and mouth in Indonesia. But some Australian producers are wondering why it isn't vaccinating local livestock against the highly contagious virus.
Yeah, and it's it's a reasonable assumption to make without going into the facts. And the facts are that if we were to preemptively vaccinate against foot and mouth, then that would mean that we would lose our status for export. 160 markets that we have around the world for our great red meat industry, they come to an abrupt halt, and that would mean that industry would stop. So we can't preempt the vaccination process. The other thing to consider, Mike, is this is a live vaccine. Unlike some vaccines, this is live. That's why we don't manufacture or store that vaccine on Australian shores. In Australia,
it's in the UK, isn't it?
I'm sorry, Mike.
It's in the UK, isn't it? We store it there.
Yeah, that's right. But they've had that disease, which has been prevalent. And you've only got to look back to 2006 and the millions of livestock that affected, the UK market there. And they still live with that legacy, Mike.
Yeah, the mad cow disease, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's why it's so important here in Australia that, we haven't had this since 1821, 150 years. It is a terrible virus that would decimate our industry. And 70% of our livestock go around the world as far as exports are concerned. Yeah. We have in Tasmania, a reputation of being the clean, green, pristine industry when it comes to red meat. We've got 800 lambs going out of our port in Burnie to the Coles and Woolworths job, up and down the eastern seaboard. Got Swift with our King Island brand, and we've got, Greenhams and Sons. I was only with the Premier last week discussing this very matter with Peter Greenham himself. And I'll tell you what they're concerned about. If that gets in here, the red meat industry will stop.
Well, they've actually, I know that, $5 million the government's committed to for technical support package for Indonesia, Timor-Leste and Papua New Guinea with that. But what is of major concern that we're hearing about, the virus has been spreading in Indonesia, and now it's hit the extremely popular resort island of Bali, which everybody pops over to at some stage and has a great time. But the worry is coming back. So we're looking at, any given day, Biosecurity Tasmania must have those inspectors fairly heavily endorsed, looking at for muddy shoes and all sorts of strange things.
Yeah, they have, and the Tasmanian state government, the minister in the state has ramped up. I'm concerned about as a farmer, as a producer, is at that risk that's coming out of Indonesia, particularly Bali, as you rightly say. Amount of and this is to our, not necessarily our rural visitors that visit Bali, but from that, maybe from the towns and cities that don't necessarily understand the implications and the fallout that foot mouth and other, like these other pathogens can to our industry. The virus stays live for about 24 hours on people's shoes and clothing. Right. So what I'm suggesting, what I've made very clear, is that we need stronger measures at points, airports and ports in Indonesia, Denpasar Airport. I'd like to see a foot bath. I'd like to see always, every single last visitor that is leaving Bali, I'd like to see them gone through with a fine-tooth comb in Bali, and then another protocol once they hit the shores of Australia. And I'd also like to see them a mandate which prevents them from visiting rural or regional areas. Because you've got to remember that we've got 103 flights out of there last week. It doesn't take very long for somebody to get from Bali to Tamworth, Dubbo, Smithton. In a number of, just a matter of hours, and then of course they've spread the disease, and as I said, people don't realise the gravity of this. This will decimate our industry, not just not just for the short term, but the provenance that damage to our clean green image is
dairy,
so vitally important.
Meat, it's huge. I know that I was reading that talking about Joe Palmer, I think, local minister for primary industries and water. I know that I was reading that she's actually put in place, or said that they've doubled the number of detected dog teams to 12, so that to complement the existing workforce at Hobart, Launceston, and Devonport airports as well, and I'm sure where the Spirit is as well, coming across, they may even do something there. But I mean, it is serious, and I just think possibly a greater education campaign could be a little bit more helpful too.
Yeah, no, you're dead right, and it's more than education. We need to be positive. We need to get out there. We need to be, at those airports and ports in Indonesia. Everybody needs to be walking through that, and it's not like you have to walk through a bath of fluid. It's simply walking on a foam pad with that foam pad is impregnated with a chemical that destroys the virus. And then again, a positive check once they get in here. The other thing to consider, Mike, is is unlike, the top end of Australia where we might have an animal, our stocking rates are different. We might have an animal every 70 acres, one animal. Once you start getting down into Victoria and Tasmania, then our stocking rates are far greater than that. We run at least an animal to the acre, in some cases more. So the chances, if that were to ever get in here, then the spread of that is multiplied by the amount of concentrated cattle that we have on a particular part, an acre. So it's going to hit Victoria and Tasmania probably worse than anywhere else with our stocking rates. And, the other thing...
Are you there? Oh, you're disappearing. You disappeared. Gavin, sorry.
Qualified.
Gavin, you disappeared a little bit there. I don't know whether you turned a corner or something, but I completely lost your signal for just a second or two there.
The point I was making, Mike, was that vaccine needs to be administered by a trained vet. And, do we have the amount of vets on call to administer such protocol? That's another issue that we need to look. We need to worst case this.
And I've got Dennis from Wynyard called with a question for you, Gavin. It says, Dennis says he was involved in a foot and mouth disease scare in Lagana a few years ago, and the case then was if Australia had an outbreak, Tasmania would be included in the quarantined area. But if Tasmania had an outbreak, the mainland wouldn't need to be quarantined as well, therefore not impacting their meat exports. Is that still the case?
Oh, I don't know about the legalities of that jurisdictional fallout, but what I'm saying is it doesn't matter whether this thing's in Dubbo, in Townsville or in Smithton. If it gets in, the entire industry is wrong.
World of hurt. Yeah. Tell me, if we move on, we're aware of that now. You went to Greenham's, you mentioned them before, in Circular Head, and there's still worker shortage.
Yeah, there is, and you can imagine, Peter Greenham himself was telling me an anecdotal story, some months ago. They had a number of people that, were on the Pacific Islander program that absconded from the workforce. They were offered on the black market. They were offered a better deal, cash money for some person that's pirated, the scheme. That meant that shift needed to close down, and you can probably understand and appreciate that a processor like Greenham's, they lose half a dozen out of the shift, then that shift needs to close down, and they haven't got the ramp up, they haven't got the backup of personnel, and it's very difficult to Peter was concerned and frustrated with it's very difficult to get local labour to work in somewhere like an abattoir. So we need that Pacific Islander program. I did a lot of work with Greenham's and with JBS Swift to make sure that we had those workers there ready to go. And it's important that we continue that so that they can do their planning and they can make that capital investment that they need to grow their business. But, workforce, particularly, meat industry, those downstream industries, and you try and get a relief milker in, Tagari or somewhere like that. It is extremely difficult, and workforce
Good point.
is the thing that's impeding the growth of the industry. It's their biggest risk at the moment. It's what keeps them awake at night, and we need to make sure that our immigration, that our ag visa, that our Pacific Islander program that we've had running for a number of years continues and is strengthened so that people can grow their businesses and rely on that workforce.
Interesting. You're spot on, but we're talking, I guess, touching on farms as well, and it is Farm Safety Week going until the 24th, which started kind of yesterday, and I know that they're FarmSafe Australia are urging farmers to consider many of the intangible factors that lead to workplace injuries on the farm and fatalities. I mean, that's something we don't often think about because they work so damn hard, again, with a worker shortage.
That's right. And the other thing, Mike, is on a farm, there are so many dangerous things, machinery, animals, so many risks. In fact, there were 46 fatalities on Australian farms just in 2021 alone. So FarmSafe, with their program this year, are urging farmers to consider the intangible factors that lead to industry, injuries on farms and in industry. Things like child safety, and you know how a kid. I used to visit farms as an agricultural contractor. Every single farm kid is interested in machinery. They're drawn to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So as a contractor, I was extremely worried about it, extremely cognizant of the fact that, every time I moved that machine, which, could be 15 or 20 tonnes, where did that kid go? It was on my mind constantly. And educating kids that they need to stay away from farm machinery, they need to know the rules, and also people that are visiting farms, pardon me, like contractors, but they understand the risks with kids.
Good point.
There are other factors. The mental health issues that go alongside of the industry, particularly given that our ag sector, quite often it's a solitary type endeavour where you don't have a lot of contact with friends and colleagues. That mental health issue is important. And I know Rural Alive. Well, I went to a dinner. An education type night in Smithton the other day, where Rural Alive and Well in Tasmania are spreading the good news about mental health first aid, particularly in the ag sector, doing a fantastic job. And young Beck Franken's just been appointed to that as the regional officer. So she's from a farm, she gets it, and she's out there, being proactive and encouraging farmers to seek help when they need it. Fatigue is another one. Our farmers are doing longer hours with less workforce, so that means that, they're fatigued, they're tired, and the risk for injury, that grows as the amount of hours grow. Complacency is another issue. We've done this a million times before. It's easy to just jump on the motorbike. I don't need my helmet. I can just zoom across the paddock, and that's the time when accidents happen, Mike.
Yeah. Good point. I mean, it's FarmSafe Australia. Where can they find out more information? I mean, there's a lot there, but it's great that we have a Farm Safety Week. I mean, we just don't want to forget our farmers.
Yeah, and there's a website. So if you just type in Farm Safety and FarmSafe Australia, and if you need to know any information around the foot and mouth outbreak, you can go to www.agriculture.gov.au/animal/FMD, foot and mouth disease, or there's a hotline 1-800-675-888, and farmers need to be really cognizant, really watching their stock. Help is there. The minister is in front of the curve when it comes to putting these processes and these protocols in place. But, I can't stress how important this is and how devastating this would be to our country and particularly our clean, green state of Tasmania.
Absolutely, and well said, Gav. Tell me, just to finish up, the new rehabilitation centre, it's now officially opened, West Burnie Way?
Which one was that, Mike? Sorry, you're talking about?
You were sort of what's 20 beds for those who need. I think it's called a circuit breaker. They say in a safe, tranquil space, and you're cutting the ribbon at the official opening of the Serenity House.
Serenity House, and that's the drug and alcohol rehabilitation centre, which takes in most of the northwest, including there's facility there to reach out into Circular Head. So they're doing a great job there. They've got 20 beds. They've got a new facility in Burnie, which is a home, Mike. And
lovely.
That they deal with our most vulnerable, those affected by alcohol and drug abuse and addiction. And the point I made when I visited them was I congratulated them because the fact that these are hurt people and hurt people often hurt. They're prickly and they need help. Serenity House is one of those great institutions that I don't like the word institution, Mike, but it's a home where access to help is available.
Yeah, that's all that's probably needed is access to help. I mean, that's a rehabilitation centre. Nice one, Gavin. Gavin, good to talk to you, mate. Gavin Pearce, our Federal Liberal member for Braddon, with our regular chat, and we'll chat again soon. I look forward to it.
Likewise, Mike. Bye.
Thanks. Good to talk to you. Gavin Pearce with the Tasmania Talks. Coming up, having a chat to Kim Butler, Civil Contractors Federation, about the High Vis Army.